Hi everyone, this is meteorologist Joel Curtis with your Alaska Weather TV show, brought to you by the National Weather Service and your local public television stations. So here we go. Let's take a look at, first of all, we had an all-time December record temperature for Utqiagvik as of 7:20 a.m. December 4th, yesterday. 40 degrees, 40 Fahrenheit, and the previous record was smashed. The previous old record was 34 Fahrenheit, set in 1932, so that's quite a record gone by the wayside there. Looking at some of our headlines, our western coastal areas, and including the Bering Strait and St. Lawrence Island, some high water with a potential of an ice shove and a winter storm warning. Both are ending this evening as we broadcast this here. But we also got a report of a little bit of water for overflow problems for the lower Kuskokwim River. So the ice and the water are not mixing well down there in the lower Kuskokwim. So looking at our satellite image, we've got a weak frontal system dissipating over the central portion of the state. And then we also have a developing weather system. It looks like about two lows, but that's all going to shape into one low by this afternoon. And that system is approaching the west coast and will move onshore directly. So looking at today's weather, 969, a hefty low pressure system near the Gulf of Anadyr. That's all. It's a couple of centers merged into one. Trough extending down through the Bering Sea, and the front just moving just about onshore as we broadcast this. Also, we have a weak system across the central portion of the state, but still causing a little bit of light snow or so, and a frontal wave that's dissipating rapidly just south of the Kenai Peninsula there, and a trough along the Panhandle. And then for tonight, that front moves well inland, but it's moving really, really slow. Snow showers and a little bit of light snow behind that front. A couple of troughs moving across the Bering Sea with, again, some snow showers, a few mixed areas of precipitation, and a cold front extending south from Kodiak Island. And then also, now that whole system that was in the Gulf is really weakened out and causing showers across the Gulf of Alaska, and a little bit of light snow in the southeast Alaska, as well as some snow over the mainland. And then looking ahead to tomorrow, now that low in the Gulf has redeveloped to 995 millibars, just south of Cape Clear, and a frontal system along with that. Plenty of precipitation out over the Gulf and a little bit of snow for the Panhandle. And then the main occluded front now has moved inland a little bit, got a little bit of clearing behind it for the Norton Sound area. But as you can see, there's pretty good precipitation over the mainland portion of the state, and snow showers as usual over the Bering Sea and up to the Alaska Peninsula. And then for Wednesday's weather, now the energy really focuses on the Gulf of Alaska, with a couple of low centers out there around 982, 983 millibars, pushing some snow again up on southeastern Alaska, not too heavy, and then also all across the mainland portion of the state with all those weak systems that have come through there. Still a few flurries around. Also, the shower activity has gone down some in the Bering Sea and for the Alaska Peninsula as well. So looking at our low temperatures Tuesday morning, temperatures in the mid-20s to all the way up to 39 for portions of southeastern Alaska, and then in the mid-20s over there for south central, except for 3 degrees up by Golconda with a little bit of clearing skies there. Looking at high temperatures Tuesday afternoon, temperatures ranging all the way from 30 up at Skagway into the mid-40s in the southern Panhandle, 36 for Yakutat, 13 for Golconda, 29 for Talkeetna, feet, and then temperatures across the 30s for the Kenai Peninsula and 31 for Anchorage. And then for our low temperatures Wednesday morning, temperatures 29 for Skagway, but then staying above freezing there for most of the Panhandle, 32 for Yakutat, 12 for Gulkana, and then temperatures generally in the 20s and lower 30s for the rest of South Central. For Wednesday afternoon, temperatures again in the 40s for the southern Panhandle, 33 for Skagway, 36 for Yakutat, 19 for Gulkana, but the rest of the South Central in the anywhere from the mid-20s to the lower 30s. And then for our low temperatures Tuesday morning, we've got, again, a lot of single digits showing up there, but 22 as you get out toward Point Hope, 19 for Kotzebue, and then in the teens generally in the central interior. And then as we get to Tuesday afternoon, temperatures ranging anywhere from the teens to the mid-20s in the central interior, a couple of single digits along the north slope, but as you get further west, those temperatures still staying in the upper 20s due to that southerly flow aloft. And then also we've got Wednesday morning temperatures in the single digits along the north slope until you get west again. And then Point Hope 22, Nome 14, and Kotzebue 14. But Fairbanks is looking for a low of 10 with maybe a little bit of clearing, and Fort Yukon 5. So then Wednesday afternoon, looking at a broad range of temperatures, but you get warmer the farther west you get. And then looks like Nome is going to have a high of 24, whereas Fairbanks is going to have a high of 16. And then down as you get a little bit further south for Amonic, let's say a high of around 25. So for our low temperatures Tuesday morning for Southwest, looking at temperatures really in the mid-20s or so, 37 for Kodiak Island, and then 30s as you go out the Alaska Peninsula and get into the Aleutians, around freezing or so, and 29 for the Pribilofs. And then for Tuesday afternoon, look at the temperatures right around 30 for lots of southwestern Alaska, and then climbing up into the mid-30s to even touching 40 for the Alaska Peninsula, 36 for the Pribilofs, and the upper 30s as you go out the chain. And then for Wednesday morning, we've got temperatures again in the teens for a lot of southwestern Alaska, but a few readings near 20, closer to the open water, and then 30s as you go out the Alaska Peninsula, 28 for the Pribilofs. And then for our high temperatures Wednesday afternoon, temperatures in the mid-20s or so for southwestern Alaska, and then well into the 30s, and even a couple of readings in the 40s for the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutian chain, 37 for the Pribilofs. So let's take a quick look at the long-range forecast for 6 to 10 days. That would be December 11th to the 15th. We're looking at a slight chance of above normal temperatures for Utiagavik and Point Hope, but then as you get down toward southeastern Alaska, including a good portion of the mainland, the probability gets pretty strong that those are going to be below normal temperatures, especially for the Panhandle, almost all the way down to Ketchikan. So then looking at our precipitation outlook, below normal temperatures for the below normal precipitation for the Panhandle, all the way over to Yakutat and even Prince William Sound, and then on up to Fairbanks and Anchorage, and just a slight chance of above normal precipitation for Utiagavik all the way down to Dillingham along the west coast. And then for our 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, we've got for the 13th to the 19th. We've got a slight chance of above normal temperatures from all along the west coast, from Dillingham on up to Utiagavik. A swath of area of normal temperatures along the midsections, and then as you get further southeastern in the mainland and the Panhandle, we see an increasing chance of below normal temperatures both for the Panhandle and even for Anchorage and down on the Kenai Peninsula. And then looking at our 8 to 14 day precipitation outlook, we've got above normal precipitation, slight chance of that for most of the West Coast, Alaska Peninsula, and then down through South Central, but normal for the northeastern part of the mainland and also along the Gulf Coast until you get to around the Juneau-Sitka area, where we have a slight chance of below normal temperatures, and it's looking like that is going to hold there for a while, all the way out to December 19th. So the week before Christmas, we're again looking for not a whole lot of chance of either way from normal. So thanks for tuning in there, and everybody stay safe out there. Good to see you again, and we'll be back tomorrow.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, and now for your aviation weather forecast. Starting out with our flying weather Tuesday morning, we have extensive IFR over the mainland Alaska, a little bit up over the north slope, as well as the eastern Gulf Coast and most of the panhandle with IFR, marginal VFR just about every place else, with a little VFR flying out the peninsula. Then we looked on Tuesday afternoon, again, extensive IFR along the north slope, as well as down into mainland Alaska, over to Norton Sound and Kotzebue Sound and down to the Alaska Range, as well as Prince William Sound and all along the Gulf Coast eastward, and including most of the panhandle. For Wednesday morning, we've got, again, the IFR drops out quite a bit. Still a few patchy areas, particularly Norton Sound, a little bit in southwest, as well as the eastern Brooks Range, also the southern southeastern portion of mainland Alaska, as well as the Kenai Peninsula, and then on over to the panhandle. And then for Wednesday afternoon, some IFR again over the Brooks Range, a little bit on the north slope, across the central interior, and then IFR mainly along the mountains in southeast Alaska, a little bit creeping in for the eastern Aleutians. For our past conditions on Tuesday, starting out with Anaktuvik, IFR, Adigan, IFR conditions, Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, both IFR, Rainy Pass, IFR, Windy Pass, IFR becoming a marginal VFR in the afternoon, Isabel Pass, IFR, Mentasta Pass, marginal VFR, improving to VFR later in the afternoon, for Tanita Pass, IFR, and for Portage Pass, marginal VFR dropping into IFR in the afternoon, and also some turbulence expected. Chilkoot and White Pass, IFR. For our freezing levels Tuesday morning, an extensive area of just a little bit above the surface for the southern Kenai Peninsula, Alaska Peninsula, a little bit into the southwest, and then for the northwestern section of the state, we do have slightly above freezing level for surface for the freezing level, and then 2,000 feet along the Gulf, and then south of the Aleutians on up to 6,000 feet as you get down to Haida Gwaii. For our icing on Tuesday, we're expecting a couple of patchy areas of isolated moderate, some with the old front that's stretching out across the mainland portion of the state, around 2,000 to 4,000 feet or so for those super cool liquid water droplets that cause the icing. And then we have a couple of areas. First of all, the headland areas along the southern west coast, Cape Romanzoff comes to mind, with some considerable moderate, as well as the Lake Clark Pass area, the west side of Kodiak Island. Also, Prince William Sound seeing a little bit of considerable moderate, as well as going further south along that old front. Those heights around 2,000 to 4,000 feet again. And then we have some upslope conditions for considerable moderate icing over the mountainous areas of southeastern Alaska, and that's around 2,000 to 12,000 feet. Looking at our jet stream on Tuesday, most of the jet out over the Aleutians, up to 150 knots as you get south of Dutch Harbor. In the meantime, we have a little bit of southeasterly wind all the way up to 65 knots as you get up to Point Hope. Southwesterly is about up to 80 out over the Gulf, and then another branch of the jet stream picks up at Great Slave Lake. And then for our 9,000-foot winds on Tuesday, we've got an upper-level low just north of the Gulf of Anadyr. Some 40 knots gets into the Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, pretty calm over most of mainland Alaska. Maybe you see 20 knots or so. And then as we get down to the Alaska Peninsula, we see a little bit of 60 picking up and 45 knots through Dixon Entrance. And then for our 3,000-foot winds, again, 30 knots in Kotzebue Sound or so. Otherwise, 55 knots as you come down across the Alaska Peninsula, 35 knots out in the Gulf. And then for our turbulence on Tuesday, just a couple of areas of considerable moderate right along the northern end of the Alcan, as well as those headland winds we were talking about, Cape Romanzoff down to Cape Newenham, some on along Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, and a little bit in the farther western Aleutians. So fly safe out there and be sure to file a flight plan.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us once again is our good friend Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. Thanks again for joining us, Eric. We really appreciate it, as always.
Happy to be here, Dave.
Thanks. And, you know, we're going to ask you some more satellite questions here, but, you know, since you're a regular guest, we're going to give you a riddle this time, kind of a trick start to the show. How do you see a polar bear in a snowstorm?
Sounds like a challenging question because the polar bear is white and the snowstorm's white. Yeah. How do you do that? Well, in the world of satellite meteorology, you couldn't, because the spatial resolution of this instrument that we're going to talk about today has 375 meters resolution, and even the most well-fed polar bear will not be 375 meters across.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to run into such a creature, would you? In the satellite meteorology world, the equivalent would be, how do you tell the difference between clouds and then an area that has no clouds but's covered by snow, a piece of ocean that has no clouds but has sea ice? All three of these are white. The snow, the clouds, the sea ice, it's all white. So how, using satellite data, can you tell someone where the clouds are and where the clear areas are? This is important for aviators. Mariners want to know, in the ocean there, this white stuff, is that sea ice or is that just a cloud? How do we tell the difference? And it turns out, if you look, say, at a picture of Alaska from the springtime, March or April, and it's high noon, so we're getting a lot of sunshine. If you were riding on a satellite with your human eye, look down, everything's white. And we've got a picture of Alaska from early April, and we're seeing some of the lower elevations in south central Alaska are melting out, getting some brown ground there, but otherwise there's a whole lot of white on the image. What areas are cloudy, but what areas are clear and covered by snow or ice? It turns out that if we leave the visible spectrum behind a little bit. See, a satellite has multiple channels in the electromagnetic spectrum that it can look at. Part of that's visible light, what we see as humans, but there's a lot going on at other wavelengths. If we add in something that's called near infrared, what we couldn't quite see, but we're getting into that infrared territory, there's a magical property that we can exploit.
Secrets to find.
Oh yeah. This is actually powerful and almost magical, that at a slightly longer wavelength, when the sun shines down on Alaska and then it bounces off back to the satellite, at that near infrared wavelength, it turns out that snow and ice will absorb that wavelength, but liquid water, like liquid droplets in a cloud, will reflect it back. And that's not the way it works in visible. Visible, it just bounces off of all those targets the same. But at near infrared, snow and ice absorbs it, and the liquid will reflect it back. Liquid cloud droplets will do that. And so an image where everything looks white suddenly becomes colorful. And the way this recipe works is that the clouds look pink, and the snow-covered ground and the ice-covered ocean look blue. Suddenly now, we're able to see the polar bear in the snowstorm. We're able to see where the clouds are and where the snow is and where the ice is. This is a powerful advantage. Consider the case zooming into the Bering Strait area. What if you were asked to brief a pilot who wanted to fly, say, from Kotzebue down to Savoonga or Gamble and had to fly VFR, visual flight rules, so they had to stay out of the clouds? Could you use a satellite image where everything is white to provide that pilot any guidance?
It'd be pretty tricky.
Very tricky. And that's why we have to go to this other recipe where the all-white polar bear in the snowstorm becomes more colorful. And now we can tell the pilot, aha, this is a cloud you want to stay out of, but over here, sure, it looks white in the visible spectrum, but what we're doing, we'll show you, oh, this is just snow-covered ground, but it's clear, so you can fly right through there. Visual flight rules. Same thing for a mariner who might want to get down to St. Lawrence Island, say, but has to avoid the sea ice. This product has applicability there as well.
Wonderful.
It's an amazing new technology, so many new channels. The satellite that makes this imagery actually has 22 different channels that it looks at.
22 secret decoder rings.
22 secret decoder rings.
Okay. You know, I liken this to an activity I had in the car when I was growing up. We go on long car rides, and we do all the work in these activity books to, you know, stay calm, cool, and collected for our parents who were trying to get us across the state. But to get the answer, the real answer, you had to apply that red sheet to see the answer or the secret path or whatever the message was in that activity book to get you onto the next page. And it's also like a photography filter, right? If you're taking a lot of pictures, you can apply different colors to see different parts of that image. I mean, that sounds a lot like what you're talking about.
Oh, you know it. The information is in there all along. We just have to combine the channels in a way to reveal what's in there. And by the way, you're dating yourself. So you didn't have an iPad in the back of the car?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, we have, lastly, for dessert, there's a great image of this same kind of recipe. We're looking at South Central Alaska the first week of January. In first week of January, the sun, even at noon, is really low on the horizon, barely up. And in this image, the fun thing is the shadow of Denali. We can see the shadow of Denali over a lower pink cloud deck.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Denali at 20,000 feet casts a big shadow. So this is another, just for fun, kind of application here. This is called multispectral satellite imagery, and it's the future. And happily, the future is now.
Oh, that is fascinating. And 22 different secrets that can be revealed from just one satellite tool that's floating overhead. Eric, thanks so much for joining us again. We can't wait to have you back and telling us more secrets of satellite technology that are passing over us every single day, many times a day, over Alaska, and helping us all the way in many different parts of our lives. So thanks so much for joining us again.
Oh, happy to be here.
All right. And thank you for staying with us. We'll be back with a little more weather here in just a few minutes. And of course, we'll have more Alaska Weather Facts anytime online.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And now for your marine forecast. Starting out with a quick look at today's ice edge, there has been some erosion even in the Chukchi Sea a little bit with the most recent wind events. However, the ice forecaster tells me that things are really starting to fill in, and even in the southern sections now we're starting to see a little bit more ice than previously. Today's marine forecast for southeast. On the inside waters, looking at southeast winds 15 to 20 knots, a few gusts of 35 in the lower sections there, and seas ranging up to 4 feet. On the outside waters, we've got some onshore flow looking like 15 to 20 knots and seas up to 8 feet. Then for Wednesday, we're looking at a reversal up there by Cape Suckling. Easterlies 25, seas up to 11 feet, and winds 20 knots, so it should get a little bit further south, seas up to 15 feet. On the inside, winds 15 to 25 knots and seas up to 5 feet. For South Central, we've got some westerlies kicking in a little bit. Winds 15 to 25 knots on the outside water, seas ranging up to 10 feet. Prince William Sound southerlies 20 knots, seas 4 feet. And in Cook Inlet, 10 to 20 knots and seas up to 6 feet down by Kennedy Entrance. And now for Wednesday, looks like the wind is really going to kick in for Kennedy Entrance. 45 to 50 knots down there, seas up to 17 feet. Gale force south of Stewart, seas winds 35 knots out of the northwest, seas 14 feet. Tapering off a little bit as you get further east. Prince William Sound 20 knots, seas 4 feet, and further up in Cook Inlet down to 10 knots. And then for Tuesday's marine forecast, the Peninsula and Kodiak Island looking westerlies really kicking in tomorrow. Winds 25 to 30 knots. Looking at seas on the Pacific side up to 13 feet, and on the Bering Sea side up to 14 feet. And then for Wednesday, looks like we're getting a little northerly component on those winds. Winds up to 45 knots off of Kodiak Island, otherwise 30 to 40 knots. And on the Pacific side, seas up to 18 feet, the Bering Sea side up to 12 feet. And then for the Aleutian chain, we've got westerlies kicking in, winds all areas 30 to 35 knots. On the Bering Sea side, up to 17 feet. On the Pacific side, up to 18 feet. And then for Wednesday, start kicking back in with easterlies, 15 to 25 knots. Seas on the Bering Sea side up to 9 feet, and on the Pacific side also 9 feet. For the West Coast, we've got winds 15 to 30 knots out of the westerlies, seas up to 14 feet and 21 feet south of St. Matthew Island there. And then for Wednesday, we've got westerlies again, around 20 to 25 knots, and seas up to 15 feet. For the Arctic coast, we've got easterlies kicking in 25 to 35 knots, and in ice-free waters, we've got about 5 foot of sea. And then down toward the Bering Strait, got a southerly component on the wind, 20 to 25 knots, seas up to 14 feet as you get south of the Bering Strait. And then for the Arctic coast on Wednesday, we've got easterlies along the north slope, 25 to 30 knots, and down toward the Bering Strait, around 20 to 25 knots, seas up to 13 feet as you get south of the strait. So recapping tonight's weather, that occluded front moving onshore for the west coast, bringing some snow. We've got some light snow across the mainland portion due to the old front that's dissipating. Trough going through the Gulf of Alaska with a lot of rain showers and snow onshore there. For Tuesday, we're looking at that low in northeastern Russia. It's filling to 986 millibars, and then a new low has formed south of Kodiak Island, 995 millibars. Plenty of snow showers over the Bering Sea, light snow over the interior, and rain over the Gulf with snow for the Panhandle. And then on Wednesday, we're seeing all the energy really focus over in the Gulf of Alaska, 982 to 983, two low centers, plenty of wind being generated with that system, front moving onshore to the south, and then light snow over the Panhandle, snow showers out over the western Gulf, very light snow over most of the mainland, and a couple of troughs moving through the Bering Sea for a little precipitation. So that's all we have for our marine forecasts. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.